Picture this: a quiet hospital floor, the soft beeping of monitors, nurses moving with purpose and compassion, and then suddenly, a voice cuts through the peace like a knife through butter. "This is unacceptable! I demand a private room right now!" That's Karen Patterson, 52 years old. Standing at the nurse's station in her hot pink designer blazer and gold jewelry, screaming at exhausted healthcare workers who'd just finished a 12-hour shift saving lives. And what you're about to hear will absolutely change how you think about entitlement, compassion, and what really matters when everything falls apart. Maria Rodriguez, a dedicated nurse with 10 years of experience and a heart bigger than most people's egos, looked up from her computer where she'd been updating charts for a cancer patient who never once complained, despite unbearable pain, and she took a deep breath, trying to find patience for this woman who was demanding special treatment in a hospital that was already operating at maximum capacity during a healthcare crisis. "Ma'am, I understand you're frustrated," Maria said calmly, her voice steady despite Karen's finger jabbing in her direction. "But we're completely full today, and the semi-private room is clean, comfortable, But Karen cut her off mid-sentence, her face turning red with rage. "Do you know who I am? My husband is on the hospital board. I will have your job if you don't get me a private room immediately." Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to Rayan Review 2.0 for more real emotional HOA stories. The thing about Karen that nobody at the hospital knew yet was that she'd checked herself in for what she claimed was severe chest pain, but the emergency tests showed absolutely nothing wrong. Meanwhile, in the room she was refusing to stay in, an elderly woman named Eleanor Thompson lay quietly recovering from major cancer surgery, too weak to even ask for water, watching this entire scene unfold through her open door with sad, knowing eyes that had seen too much human cruelty in her 78 years on this earth. Maria felt something crack inside her professional composure, not anger exactly, but a deep exhaustion with people who treated healthcare workers like servants instead of heroes, and she said with controlled emotion, "Mrs. Patterson, I've been a nurse for a decade. I've held the hands of dying patients. I've worked through holidays away from my own children, and I'm telling you with complete honesty, that room is perfectly adequate, and there's a woman in there who genuinely needs care and rest." Karen's response was to demand the hospital administrator immediately, her voice getting louder and shriller, drawing the attention of other patients, visitors, and staff who were now watching this meltdown with a mixture of shock and secondhand embarrassment. Because there's something particularly ugly about watching privilege throw a tantrum in a place where people are fighting for their actual lives. Dr. James Chen, the hospital administrator, arrived within minutes, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Karen's escalating hysteria, and he listened to her demands with the patience of someone who'd dealt with difficult people before. But there was something in his eyes, a quiet disappointment in human nature, as Karen threatened lawsuits, complained about the quality of care, and insisted she deserved better treatment than common people. If you're feeling this story, hit that like button and share this video to support Rayan Review 2.0. Here's where the story takes a turn that nobody, especially Karen, saw coming. Dr. Chen calmly pulled up her medical records on his tablet, reviewed her test results, and said with professional courtesy, "Mrs. Patterson, I've reviewed your file thoroughly and I have good news. There's nothing medically wrong with you, which means we can discharge you immediately, freeing up that bed for someone who genuinely needs emergency care." The color drained from Karen's face as the reality hit her. She'd come to the hospital seeking attention and sympathy, perhaps escaping some problem at home, using chest pain as an excuse. And now her own behavior was getting her kicked out before she could even settle in. But Dr. Chen wasn't finished, he continued. "However, I'd like you to meet someone before you go." And he gently guided her to room 314 where Eleanor Thompson lay. The moment Karen walked into that room and saw Eleanor, truly saw her, something shifted in the air. Because Eleanor wasn't angry, she wasn't judging. She was just tired, so incredibly tired, with IV lines running into her thin arms, her white hair barely covering her pale scalp from chemotherapy. And when their eyes met, Karen felt something she hadn't felt in years, genuine shame. Eleanor spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "I heard you outside, dear, and I want you to know. If you need this room more than me, I can move. I don't want to be any trouble. Want to hear more life-changing HOA tales every week? Subscribe to Rayan Review 2.0 and never miss the next twist." Those words, spoken with such grace and selflessness by a woman who was literally fighting for her life, hit Karen like a freight train of reality, and for the first time in perhaps decades, her armor of entitlement cracked wide open, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face, mascara running, because she realized in that devastating moment that she'd become the villain in her own story, screaming at nurses who were angels, demanding luxury in a place of healing, acting like her manufactured drama was more important than someone's actual survival. Maria watched this transformation with professional distance but human compassion, because she'd seen this before, the moment when someone's false emergency meets someone else's real crisis. And the perspective shift is almost violent in its intensity, and Karen stood there, frozen, unable to speak. Because what do you say after you've just revealed the ugliest parts of yourself to strangers who were only trying to help? Dr. Chen, with the wisdom of someone who understood that people could change, said quietly, "Mrs. Patterson, healthcare isn't about status or connections. It's about need and humanity, and right now, I think you need something different than a hospital bed, perhaps some time to reflect on what really matters." Karen left that hospital not with a private room or sympathy, but with something more valuable. A mirror held up to her soul, and in the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened that the nurses at St. Mary's would talk about for years. Karen came back to the hospital not as a patient, but as a volunteer, bringing coffee to exhausted nurses, sitting with lonely elderly patients, reading to them, listening to their stories. And when Maria saw her one afternoon in the cafeteria wearing simple clothes instead of designer labels, her makeup lighter, her demeanor completely transformed. They shared a moment of understanding that needed no words. "I was so lost," Karen admitted, her voice cracked with emotion. "I thought demanding respect would make people respect me. I thought status and noise mattered. But Eleanor taught me in 5 seconds what I should have learned 50 years ago. Grace under pressure, dignity in suffering, and that real strength is quiet." Maria smiled, the kind of smile that comes from witnessing genuine human transformation, and she said, "Eleanor passed away last month peacefully, surrounded by people who loved her, and you know what she said about you. She said, 'I hope that woman finds peace. Everyone deserves peace.'" Karen broke down crying right there in the hospital cafeteria. Not the loud, dramatic crying of her previous life, but the quiet, soul-deep crying of someone who finally understood the weight of their actions and the grace of forgiveness they didn't deserve but received anyway. Because that's what real humanity looks like. It's not perfect, it's not always pretty, but it's capable of incredible change when we finally stop performing and start being real. Thanks for watching Rayan Review 2.0, where every story teaches a lesson. Like, share, and subscribe for more emotional neighborhood dramas. Because the truth is, we're all one moment away from being either the Karen screaming for attention or the Eleanor offering grace in suffering. And the choice of which person we become is made in these small, critical moments when nobody's watching except our own conscience and the people we impact with our actions. So today, right now, choose to be someone who adds light to the world instead of noise. Choose to see the humanity in every person you encounter. Whether they're wearing scrubs and saving lives or lying in a hospital bed fighting battles you'll never understand. Because at the end of the day, we all end up in the same place, needing compassion, offering forgiveness, and hoping that our lives meant something more than the space we took up or the noise we made.